What you are about to hear is live audio of a live boss battle in Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice. Kidding me. What? On. Come on. Yes! 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 Hey there, guys, this is Marcus Stewart, and welcome to Marcus Talks About Games, the show where I sit here and discuss the proper way to bake a pimento loaf, the show where I sit here and teach you how to crochet on the moon, the show where I discuss in detail my personal experience discovering exactly how many licks it takes to get to the center of a Tootsie Roll Pop. I'm sorry my head might not be where it normally is because I have spent the last week or so playing Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice, as you heard in the intro, to the point that I've had a hard time gripping with a reality that does not involve breaking postures and grappling up walls and dying a lot, dying often, almost all the time, because I thought I dodged that move and some reason I didn't and got hit. I saw the red little sign and I thought I blocked it, or I didn't try to block it because I know you can't block it, but I thought I moved, but it got me anyway, and I just don't understand. It's happened about 10 times now. I mean, how many times can I move out of the way of the move and still get hit by it? I just don't get it. Excuse me. Okay, excuse me. Okay. Anyways, Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice. Let's talk about that, since I seem to have that on the brain. So this is FromSoftware's latest game. It's been out a couple weeks now. I mentioned last week that I wasn't able to start playing it that weekend because I was in PAX. But when I came back, that was pretty much the last week or so, was pretty much playing that game. And I am a fan of Dark Souls and Bloodborne. I never finished Dark Souls. Bloodborne is the only FromSoftware game I've ever finished. And so far, I'm liking Sekiro quite a lot. It's very different in case you're not, I'm just going to kind of explain it real quick in case you're not aware. Even though it's made from that same team, it's got some of that DNA of Dark Souls, but it's very much its own thing. You play as a shinobi named Wolf, which on one hand is a little bit generic, but at the same time, I mean, Wolf's a cool name. You know, Wolf, rough. That's what Wolf sounds like. Woo! It's not really a wolf howl. It's almost like an owl. Well, you get the idea. But you play as shinobi, Wolf, and it's actually a pretty straightforward story where his little lord, his young ruler, gets kidnapped. He was supposed to be protecting this kid, and you're pretty much on a revenge mission to get him back. And also the guy that kidnapped your, I guess, friend. I guess they're friends. I mean, he's kind of sworn to protect this kid, but they seem like they get along well, so it's probably fine to call them friends. Wolf gets his arm sliced off, and then later on replaced with a prosthetic arm. And so that's kind of one of your main weapons. And yeah, you're trying to get revenge for losing your arm, and also you gotta rescue your child buddy. It's kind of like the movie First Kid, starring Sinbad. 90s kids will remember this probably, where, you know, Sinbad played the Secret Service agent tasked with protecting the president's son. It's a very similar story. I mean, you know, there was the part when Sinbad got shot at the end, but he survived. It's kind of like how getting your arm severed. And yeah, obviously, Miyazaki, I don't remember his first name, but he's the head of FromSoftware, big fan of Sinbad in that film, and decided to adapt a similar story for his next project. So there you go. Sekiro is the first kid of video games. Anyways, I like that the story is as straightforward as it is, because Bloodborne and Dark Souls, their storytelling with those games have famously been pretty opaque. I guess like you really had to look into a lot of reading between the lines, so to speak, to really kind of grasp what was going on there, which the fan base was always super into. Like, that's one of the appeal of those games, is piecing together what the actual narrative of those games are. Me, I didn't care as much. I love those games, but not for the story at all. I didn't really give a crap about what it was, because it was too vague for me to care, and the gameplay around it, like, I just liked going through and toppling bosses and seeing if I could survive this really harsh world. So I never really paid much story to the, I never paid much attention to the story. And so I kind of like that for the first time with these games. I'm like, okay, actually, I know what's going on here. Cool. The story so far isn't anything like amazing. It's not like The Last of Us or anything, but at least I can follow it. The combat, unlike Souls, is very offense heavy. So for like Dark Souls and Demon Souls as well, those games are hard, but you could get by in those games by more or less just kind of sticking and moving. You know, you kind of take your shots, hit, and then back up, you know, looking for openings and stuff like that. And Bloodborne kind of shifted away from that a bit, where they took away a shield. Like, you had no shield in your game, you just had a gun. So that game was a little more offense heavy and kind of emphasized dodging and just kind of being swift in general. And now Sekiro kind of takes that a little bit further, where it's very offense focused, because you have, or there's a system called posture, which basically means like your guard. And what posture does is that you have a posture meter, as well as every enemy has a posture meter. And basically, the more damage that you block or deflect kind of affects the posture meter. So if you're blocking a lot, your posture fills up. And if it fills up all the way, then your guard breaks, and then you're open for attack. And the same is true for every enemy in the game. Like, every single enemy, from grunts to bosses, have a posture meter. So on top of that, there's no stamina meter, unlike Dark Souls and Bloodborne. So you can go ham and wail on enemies as much as you want. And that's the point, because the only way to get to your enemy's life generally is to break their posture. So you just gotta either go at them and just keep swinging, and they'll block, and then eventually you might break through and then get some shots in. Or you can deflect their attacks, which also raises their posture meter. So if they're swinging at you and you're timing your blocks perfectly and deflecting them, that breaks down their guard as well. And then if you break their guard that way, it's cool because, like, you know, you'll deflect an attack, their posture will break, and then they'll be wide open, and then you can immediately turn your deflection into a counterattack. And the most powerful counterattack are these moves called death blows. And that's kind of your main way to either kill someone outright or at least take a significant chunk of their health down. And death blows are pretty much like these finishing moves that open up when your opponent's guard is down. So your opponent will have a red little dot on them, and that tells you, like, okay, you can move in now. Death blow, it'll be like a stab to the gut, or like if you're coming from behind, you'll just stab them in the neck or something like that. And then for most like grunt enemies, that'll end them instantly. And then for bosses, they'll have on top of their health bar like 2 or 3 like red dots that indicate that's how many death blows it'll take to kill them. So even though they have a normal life bar, you can beat them without draining their life, because your life dictates, on top of, like, you know, how much life you have, obviously, but it also dictates how quickly your posture will regenerate. So the less life that you have, the slower your posture meter will reset itself. So that means if you're like hurt and on your last leg, your posture is going to take a long time to go down if it's like really high up and about to break. So you got to heal. And that's the same with your enemies. So you kind of have 2 ways of going at enemies. You can either chip away at them at their health and beat them just straight up by just killing them with their, you know, just drain their health to 0. Or if you're really good at blocking and deflecting, you can just do that a bunch until their posture breaks and then just death blow them to death. And you don't even have to worry about actually draining their health bar. And it feels really good. It's a really cool system that it does take some, if you're so used to Dark Souls and Bloodborne, it takes a little bit of retraining your brain to kind of get behind that strategy. Like, it took me a while before I really kind of got the hang of it, I guess, or got used to it. But it feels very satisfying to break someone's guard or to deflect them into an opening and then going in with that death blow. One, because the combat feels really smooth and impactful. Like, blocking a shot feels great, and, you know, it's got, you know, cool sparks on the weapons as they clash. And also it just feels satisfying because a lot of enemy attacks have, in true FromSoftware fashion, enemies are tough, and getting through Sekiro, perhaps more so than any other Souls game, requires a lot of studying of your opponent's movements. Like, as always, even the grunt enemies can wipe you out if you're going in willy-nilly. And I like that because of how quickly death can come, like, because you can get death blow too. Basically, like, if your guard breaks and someone comes at you, I think some enemies can do it to you. Or if nothing else, you'll be wide open and then they just wail on you to death. But so many enemies can take you down one hit that it makes the fights feel, I guess, one, realistic. Kind of I've heard people compare it to Bushido Blade, which is a pretty accurate, because in Bushido Blade, you could one hit kill someone if you got in the right kind of shot. And Sekiro's very much like that. So I like the tense, like the intensity that brings the fights, knowing that it could end at any moment depending on how good you do. And also, it makes every fight matter, and it makes everything you do in a fight matter. Like, so I just came right before this game from playing Devil May Cry, which, you know, is a different kind of action game. It's more hack and slash. Like, you're just doing a gazillion one sword strikes on one enemy, and you're just kind of chipping them down until they explode into orbs. Here, you want every strike matters. You're like, okay, I'm gonna hit this guy here. I'm gonna block. Like, I'm gonna block, dodge, block, go in, wail on him. Like, maybe hit him before he's about to attack again, but I'm gonna hit him to stop him from attacking. Like, you kind of, it depends on the enemy, and like, every fight just feels like a one-on-one, almost kind of almost fighting game like, to a degree. Not quite, but it's, in terms of how intimate a lot of combat is. And that's especially true because if you get ganged up by a bunch of enemies, that's really hard to get out of. Like, because you can only block mostly one enemy at a time, or you can block multiple at a time if they're in front of you. But if you're fighting someone to the front and someone's to your right trying to flank you, you can't block both of those. Like, you got to position yourself in a way where you can, you know, do something about both enemies. So it's kind of like, usually if you're surrounded by 3 or more enemies, you generally want to get out of there. And they do have some attacks that are good, like kind of AoE or dealing with multiple crowds. Like I have this whirlwind slash combat art that's does he like Wolf does this spinning strike that's good for hitting more than one enemy at once. So that's been helpful for times I get ganged up on. But generally I'm like, okay, I'm getting beaten down. I need to like grapple out of here and kind of reassess things. It's really cool. It's a well designed combat system that rewards skill more than anything, and you know previous FromSoftware games do, but this game more so because unlike Bloodborne and Dark Souls, there's no like there's less RPG elements. Like you don't have a level, you don't earn experience points to level up Wolf. He doesn't have like stats like or at least he doesn't have like as many like RPG stats. Like you can't like basically you can't grind experience to get stronger if you hit a wall. Like in this game you can beat anything in the game if you're good enough with the combat system. And let me see if I can articulate this properly. Excuse me. So let's look at Dark Souls. Let's say I go to an area that maybe I shouldn't be in at the time. Like it's got a lot of high level enemies and I'm just not at the appropriate level to deal with them. So I get beat up, I leave, I decide to go grind and gain experience. You know, I use the souls to power myself up. You know, you power up your different stats. Like, oh, I want more health, I want more stamina, I want more strength. And then eventually I'm at a level I'm like, hey, I'm pretty strong now. And then you go back to that area that was giving you so much trouble before and you just mow everybody down basically. Like, you know, you still have to kind of watch yourself, but your hits do a lot more damage. Like you maybe drop them in 1 or 2 hits as opposed to like the many hits that you could before. And you're like, hey, yeah, all right, I overpowered this area thanks to grinding. In Sekiro, on the other hand, you can't really do that because it's more about mastering the execution of your moves more so than raising your stats to the point where you can just overpower enemies because of numbers. So the things that you unlock in this game are new moves, like new techniques. Like I got a new deflect that's good for spear enemies. Like if a guy comes at me with a spear, I can stomp on the spear to the ground and that'll make him open and then I can go into strike. Like moves like that, or like the spinny attack thing that I mentioned before, as well as different prosthetic arm upgrades. Like you get different weapons that you can attack to your prosthetic arm. Like you can get a spear, you can get shurikens, like it'll fire shurikens out. I got a fan recently that can do like wind things, I guess, or blow enemies around or something like that. Haven't really had a chance to use it that much. But yeah, nothing that straight up says like, hey, you've got more endurance now. And granted, you do have some upgrades that can increase your health bar, but it's very little. It's like a little bit every now and then, and those items are pretty hard to come by. Like you have to collect these prayer beads, and then when you get 4, you can upgrade your health bar a little bit. The same holds true for your attack power, where you have to kill certain bosses, and then you get a memory from the boss, and then you can turn those in at the save points, and then that'll increase your attack by like 1. So, you know, it's not completely gone, but it's not nearly as prevalent as Bloodborne or Dark Souls. And so like all your skill tree moves, or rather your entire skill tree is just made up of different attacks and like defensive moves, as well as like things like, hey, you can like a big one for me that I recommend everyone get immediately if you haven't yet is a upgrade that lets you gain health every time you death blow somebody. That's a real game changer. So something like that. So yeah, so it's like, oh, I'm having a really hard time in this fight. I can't go grind to get better necessarily, because like if I grind to get experience points, I can only spend them to get more moves, but a new move may or may not help against a certain boss. Like it was like I could beat the boss from the beginning with what I have. I just have to execute, because a lot of the bosses are more about like, oh, like I said, like studying their movements. I can deflect anything that they throw for the most part, or block anything. I just have to get good enough to know when to block, when to deflect, and then when to go in and to attack. Should I be super aggressive on this guy? Should I be a little bit more defensive, but it can't get too defensive because the way the posture system works, it punishes you for just blocking constantly, like, because you cannot block indefinitely. Like, you'll block a little bit, and like I said, your posture will break, and then it'll make you open, and then you get you get the business, as they say in the business. I don't know what business, but you know, the business. So yeah, like every boss I've had to like, I've been stuck on a few like I right now, in case you're wondering where I'm at in the game, I don't know how far I am exactly. I don't know how long the game is. But the last boss that I killed was the I'm trying to remember the name of it because it was wacky, but it was like long I might be wrong, long leg giraffe thing. Like it was this really creepy kind of like Voldo from Soul Calibur looking guy that had like these claws, like these long claws, like Vega. Like he had two pairs of those, and he had these really scary googly eyes, and he was like this abnormally large humanoid thing that was on all fours, and he just slashes at you just nonstop. Just like his whole thing is that he just comes at you relentlessly. If anyone remembers where that is the last thing that I killed. I believe it's in the Sunken Valley. So yeah, one thing I've come to notice after dropping so many like bosses, regular and mini bosses, I guess, is that it's like I feel like you could beat anything in this game without upgrading a single like, or like without gaining a single new move, because they all come down to striking at you and then blocking and then stabbing them and retaliating and coming at them. It's just different ways that you have to do that depending on what their fighting style is. Like I've never had a time where it's like, oh, I can't beat this guy unless I have this move. Getting different moves certainly helps, especially if you learn how to master them. Like if you notice a boss does something where like, actually this one move might be a good response to that. But generally it doesn't feel like anything is like, I don't feel like I've ever run anything that's like I feel he's over leveled, because that's not how the game works. I come across things like, oh my god, that thing's hard as hell. But it's like, okay, like I just have to fight him enough, and then I'll kind of figure out what their attack style is and then how to respond. So the Voldo thing that I fought, like I mentioned, he just attacks you relentlessly. I eventually figured out his strategy. I'm not going to say what it is in case I don't want to spoil. But he had a very specific theme behind his attacks where you're like, okay, I see what the game wants me to do here. And it kind of teaches you a lesson a little bit, and like saying like, okay, like you can't fight everyone the same way. This guy you have to come out a different way. And I don't know, I hope I'm articulating that well. I'm kind of excited talking about the game. I have it on pause right now, but I love that. Like I love that it's not so much about, hey, I'll just grind to get better, and then now my hits will take away 5% more damage because I spent an hour going around killing things. It's like, no. If I leave and come back, I mean, I might be a bit better in terms of like I can heal more. Like you can get items that let you use your, basically what the equivalent of the Estus flask in Dark Souls is, like your healing gourd, I believe it's called, and you can get more uses out of it if you find these certain items and bring it back to this NPC. So maybe I found some of those from exploring and like, okay, like I can heal more now, but other than that, I still have to be better at this game to beat this guy. Like my dexterity has to have gotten better. I have to be like, my reflexes have to be on point. And then much like playing the 3D Ninja Gaidens, I'm kind of feeling that because this game has beaten me into being good. So I've finally hit the point in the game where I've hit the stride. I've like every Dark Souls or Bloodborne, there's a point where like in the beginning when you're still learning how the game works and how to approach it, where you're just getting your ass kicked all the time and you're maybe frustrated and you're like, I can't even get past this opening area. How am I going to beat this game? And then eventually, once you just kind of keep at it and keep consistent, and it also helps that the games are very well designed and they feel good to play, like the combat just feels good. Eventually you just start getting good, for lack of a better term. Like it just starts to click after a while. Like much like I had the 3D Ninja Gaiden games, the Team Ninja games, I had the same feeling with that, where like those games when I first played them just kicked my ass, and it's like, how am I supposed to do this? Like, what the hell? And then eventually, because I loved how it played and I wanted to get better at it, like you just keep playing, and then eventually you fight the same enemies over and over, and you start picking up on their patterns, and then you figure out how to counter them, and then eventually the game forces you to get good at it. And then it's not so much that I went and grinded to get better, is that I can just execute better now. I know I've said that a few times now, but that's really what this game is all about. So I've reached that point with Sekiro where like some of the earlier enemies were, they can be pretty easy if you choose to stealth your way through the game. But if you're fighting them head on, I was having trouble, especially when there's more than one. Now I can go back and just destroy them because I know what they're all about. I know how to deflect them, as well as I have new moves. So I'm good now, or I'm better than I was before. And I'm continually getting better because this game constantly throws new enemies at you that require a sometimes entirely new approach to them. Like, you think you've got the game, to quote Roddy Piper, it's like just when you think you've got the answers, Sekiro changes the question, especially with its boss battles. See, it's constantly presenting a new challenge and making me approach things in different ways, and I'm always trying new prosthetic upgrades and weapons. Like I like that I can't settle on like a particular strategy for too long. I like that it's making me try different ideas out. Like it's keeping, it keeps the game fresh and interesting, and it keeps me on my toes, and it constantly challenges me. The other thing about Sekiro that's very different from Souls and Dark Souls that I like is that it's very much a stealth game on top of it. If I remember correctly, this game originally started as like a spiritual successor to the Tenchu series, which was a personal favorite series of mine back on PlayStation 1. It was a series of like ninja stealth games, and you can see some of that DNA in this game. So unlike the Bloodborns and the Dark Souls, you have a lot more mobility. Like you can jump, which you could never do in a FromSoftware game, which alone is a big game changer. And you have like this grappling hook that's used for pulling yourself up to rooftops. And there's a sense of verticality in this game that the previous games don't have. Previous FromSoftware games, that is. And you can sneak, you can press yourself against walls. It's like kind of, if you played a stealth game, you can kind of see where they're coming from. And you can choose to go around the environment like that. Like if you don't have to fight everything. Like you can choose to sneak up on people, and oftentimes it's better to do that. Like maybe if you're in an area that has a boss but he's surrounded by a bunch of dudes, maybe it's not a good idea to fight the boss because it might trigger the other dudes to come at you, and all of a sudden you're getting just complete mobbed on. So you might think like, okay, I'm gonna sneak on these rooftops, I'm gonna stealth kill some of these guys, and then maybe get the boss. But you could also stealth kill and knock off a death blow from his notches of death blows. So that's another smart way that you can approach the game. This game gives you different ways to tackle it. If you want to go sword swinging, I guess, I couldn't say guns blazing, but sword swinging and just murder everyone, if you're good enough to do that, you can absolutely do it. I like to do a mix of both. I like stealth games, and this is a decent stealth game so far. They give you a lot of tools for stealth, like things to cover your footprints and stuff like that. Sometimes the enemies seem a little inconsistent with how to detect you. Like I feel like I've had times where I was like in plain sight of the enemy and they didn't see me. You do get to judge how they see you because every enemy has these little markers on their heads that indicate like, hey, if it turns yellow, they're onto you, and if it turns red, then they've straight up seen you. But there have been times where I've snuck past someone, I was like, wow, really? He didn't see me? I'm surprised. And there's other times where like someone saw me like a mile away. I'm like, how the hell did you see me from where I was? It's not all the time, but there have been moments where I'm like, I don't know about that one. But for the most part, the stealth has been consistent and logical. And it does a lot to separate Sekiro from Souls and Bloodborne. The death mechanic is cool too, where this does not have the traditional Dark Souls thing of if you die, you leave your experience and you have to come back to collect your dead body so that you can get your stuff back. And if you die a second time, you lose it. It doesn't really have that. So instead, you die and you immediately have the option to instantly resurrect yourself and get right back into the fight. Like right where you were, you can just hit RB and you can just come back and keep going. And you also have the option to just die and, you'll go back to your last checkpoint. And the idea behind this is that your character is tied to this bloodline, this royal bloodline, and if he dies too many times because of the, I guess, somewhat supernatural nature of his blood, it causes this disease called dragon rot that gradually spreads throughout the world every time that your character dies. At first I thought it was every time that you resurrect, but it seems that it's actually every time that you just die, like die. Not die and come back, but like die for good. And the dragon rot affects, I don't know if I want to say. I mean, I know it's kind of out there at this point, but I don't know if I want to spoil. I think it's a kind of cool narrative touch, so I guess I won't spoil it, even though it's kind of out there, but I'll be nice in case you don't know. But I will say, like, it affects the world around you in a really neat way that becomes evident pretty quick when you start playing it. I think that it's a cool idea. So far, I have had some interesting interactions and involving the dragon rot. I don't think I've seen too much of the kind of how it could affect the story so far, like, or at least like, or not the story, but some of the side content, because it can affect side content and how you gate it. I feel like I haven't seen too much of that yet personally, like, because I haven't seen like too many explicit like side missions. I did one earlier on. It's one of the very first ones, if not the first one that you come across. But I feel like I haven't seen too much of those yet. So I like, maybe haven't taken the time to engage in those as much as I thought I had. But at the very least, it's an interesting idea and it's a creative mechanic that, again, kind of further separates itself from the previous games, which is ultimately what I'm happiest the most about Sekiro. Because when this game was first announced, I mean, I even showing in a trailer, I was like, oh, this looks pretty different. But you're like, is this just going to be like a Souls game with a grappling hook? And I'm happy so far that it very much isn't. Like, it's got a little bit of that stuff, but this feels like its own game. And it's challenging me in a way different way than Dark Souls or Bloodborne did. And I love that. I absolutely love that. And I love that it's doing it well. And, the game's hard. It's had its moments. I would say the worst thing about the game is that I kind of hit points where I kind of don't know where to go or what to do next, because even though the story is very straightforward, I would love like a thing in the menu that kind of reminds of like, hey, like, where should I be heading right now exactly, or what am I looking for? Because there's so many branching paths that you can take. There's multiple ways to get everywhere, and the game does reward you for exploration because there's like shinobi weapons and just all these significant upgrades that you can find if you take the time to go look for them. So if you decide to just mainline it and just go power through, like, you only fight the things that you have to fight, I mean, you could do that, but you'd be missing out on a lot. And I love that the game rewards people that want to like poke around, because again, the levels are pretty big a lot of times, and you'll find like little nook, and you're like, oh, this leads another way that I could have gotten here. Maybe one way it's sneakier than the other. But because I've been taking so many of the side paths and just taking the time to explore it, oftentimes I'm like, wait, so what was the main path? Like, where should I be going here? And so, like, right now I'm kind of at that point where I'm kind of like, okay, I'm not entirely sure what I should be doing critical path wise. Like, I'll kind of wander around and be like, oh, there's a bossy looking guy. Maybe I'll beat him and that'll lead to something. I don't know. So I wish the game was a little bit better about that. Just pointing players towards like the critical path. I would like to know what that is. It doesn't have to explicitly, like, I don't need like a compass or something that constantly tells me like, hey, go this way. But I would just like something like in like a log saying like, okay, I should be trying to reach Ashina. Okay, there's a pagoda in this area that's on this mountain. I should be looking for that. Okay, like I know what to look for now. So I would like more clarity for the main path. But so far, that's probably my only real like major complaint about the game. I'm having a great time with it, especially now that I've figured out how to play this game on its terms. I've unlocked a bunch of stuff. I've got some upgrades. I've got a lot of health things. I've bumped my health up a few times. And I'm feeling much more confident now in terms of like, okay, like I can generally handle myself. I still get nervous when I go into a new area because they're like, okay, like, what's the game gonna throw at me here? But at least I have the foundation of how to respond to things down. And I'm like, now I'm at the point where it's hard to put it down. Like, even when I hit a wall, I'm like, okay, well, I want to fight this guy over and over until I beat him. I'm turning off the console less and less out of anger. I'm more like, okay, like, I got you. Like, I see what you're doing. I see what you're cooking. And that is a beautiful place to be in. So, loving it. Talk about it some more as I make more progress in the next week or so. But I think that it's a hell of a game so far, and kudos to FromSoftware for doing something very different from their old stuff. Now, the other thing I want to talk about in regards to Sekiro is the kind of the surprising debate that I've seen kind of rise around this game in terms of its lack of accessibility, or at least different difficulty options. So Sekiro, like all FromSoftware games, has one difficulty, which is soul-crushingly hard. And that's part of the course. If you're a fan of these games, you know what you're getting into. And it's been interesting to follow the outcry over a lack of an easy mode or just different difficulty options for this game. Because I feel like I've seen it here more so than any other game, and that's been interesting for me. I wonder why that is. Is it because Sekiro's tone and presentation is more universally interesting than the previous games? Like Dark Souls is more, I guess, like medievally game, there's dragons and stuff. I mean, there's monstrosities in those games, but it's kind of like a medievally dark fantasy tone. And then Bloodborne was a little bit more like HP Lovecraft. Like, I feel like a lot of people love feudal Japan, which is what Sekiro is. And it has a little bit less of the supernatural stuff. I mean, there's plenty of weird crap in this game. But generally, you're fighting other samurais and ninjas and stuff like that. And it looks pretty as hell. And like I said, people love feudal Japan. It's a very popular time period. So maybe because of that, like, people look at this game that maybe wouldn't care about other Souls games because it's not really their thing, but they see like, oh, this is like a cool historical action game. Man, I wish I could play it, but I suck at this. I wish there was just an easy mode where I can experience the world, and also because it has a story that's far more coherent. I want to learn what the story is. I'm interested in this plot. I just wish the barrier to entry was lower. That's my personal take for why people are probably more interested in playing Sekiro than other FromSoftware games. And I've seen the arguments of like, hey, it'd be cool to have a easy mode. I saw I actually wrote a news story for Screen Rant about Matt Thorson, who is the creator of Celeste, which is a hard game in its own right, but it was praised for having this really cool assist mode that had this myriad of options for making the game easier for people that just want to enjoy the story, or maybe had physical disabilities where you could reduce the game's speed, you could have infinite like life and all these other little things, basically almost like cheat codes, just to let you play Celeste however you want to play it. And he kind of was on Twitter pitching like hypothetically what such a mode would look like in Sekiro, because he was playing the game and said he loved it, but maybe he could stand to have one of those. And seeing the responses to that from people that were like just this clear line in the sand of like the FromSoftware like hardcore, they were like, no, that'll ruin the game. What are you talking about? Like, how could you suggest such a thing? Like even though the assist mode would be completely optional, like just the mere presence of it in the game would somehow ruin it for them, which to me is a bit elitist and kind of and dumb. And then, the people on the other side saying like, yeah, like all these games should have that because people should be able to play these games. I get the and I said this in a news story too, kind of when I was editorializing a bit at the end, where I understand the fan side of it, of saying like, well, I don't want an easy mode of these games because this is what the developer intended these games to be. Like, I totally get that from a purely artistic standpoint of like protecting the artist's intent. Like, these games are meant to be these overwhelming challenges that they want the player to conquer, and that's just what they are. I get that. I could see that. On the same time, where I don't like is that, again, that idea of like crapping on it purely because it quote unquote makes the game less manly, and even though it's optional, like, I don't want no baby game, boo, even though you don't have to make it a baby game because it'd be optional, you can still play normally. But I don't know. Do they want, like, is it that thing of like, we don't want any quote unquote filthy casuals playing these games because then if you put those modes in, more people will play it that maybe wouldn't otherwise, and that's bad for some reason that more people get to play the game. I don't know. I don't know. I feel like that's like their argument starts to fall apart when I kind of start to try to find a reasoning out loud of like, are you mad that more people would play it? And then like, would it bug you if someone says like, yeah, I beat the game on easy mode, and you're like, that doesn't count as beating it. I beat it the real way, which is the traditional way, which, why would that bother you? It shouldn't, as long as you beat it the way you want to beat it. Cool. Yeah. It's, I'm kind of on the side of, I'm more on the side of the accessibility side of like, sure, why not? Like, if there was an easy mode in this game, I wouldn't care, because I would still play it the traditional way. It would depend on how they label the difficulty. I don't think they can do like a normal game of like easy, medium, and hard. I feel like it would have to be a bit more specific, where you would have two options. You would have the default difficulty, which is how I would title it, either default, which is, and then like maybe a description that says like the From Software experience, like, you know, this is what this game is supposed to be. Basically, this is what you know and love. It's not normal or hard. It's just what From Software tunes it to. So I would just put that, the traditional experience or the default experience, whatever you want to title it, just to let you know that this is what this would normally be. And then assist mode or easy or whatever you want to call it. And so that there's no, like, it's easier to determine whether or not, like, if you did easy, medium, and hard, I'd be like, well, is medium like normal From Software, or is hard normal From Software? Like, what should I do? Because I want, like, me personally, I just want the normal From Software experience. So like, which one would that be? I think simplifying it to just the default difficulty is like, okay, that's just clearer to me. So I think that's personally one way you could do that, and it would totally be fine. I've heard some people also argue that if you put an easy mode in the game, it would tempt them to drop it, and they don't want that temptation. That's a weird complaint to me, because that sounds like a self-control issue more than anything. So it's like, that's on you, buddy. Me personally, I wouldn't be tempted to it, but it would also, again, I like the idea of having the option to be like, you know what, if I started this at the default difficulty to try it out and I'm just not having fun with it, like it's just too hard for me, I would like to have the option to be like, you know what, I'm not having fun anymore beating my head against this thing. I'm going to drop it down a notch and, you know, be comfortable doing that. Again, I don't see, outside of a weird like taking it as a weird personal insult, what, like, objectively why that would be a bad thing to do. I mean, I guess it would be more work for the team because they would have to balance the game twice. And I think that if you looked up Matt Thorson's Twitter thread, I think he had some really genuinely good ideas for how you would make this game easier without breaking what it's supposed to be in terms of its spirit. Like, you had ideas like, hey, you know, like maybe easy mode, you just have more posture, like your posture takes longer to fail. Maybe the enemies move a little bit slower, or the combat speed is slowed a bit. Like, you're still doing the blocking and parrying thing, it just maybe isn't as like white knuckle as it normally is. But yeah, like I just want to chime in kind of my own personal feelings on that, and feeling like an increasingly growing debate that I think that Sekiro would be fine with some sort of quote-unquote easy option or assist mode or whatever you want to call it, if it's done a specific way, like the way I listed. Just have two difficulties, easy, or I don't even want to call it easy because that almost feels insulting to a degree, but like casual experience, we'll call it that, I guess. Like casual and default, like have those two where you're like, okay, I know exactly what both are. And then give me the option to change it to one or the other, because maybe you're the other way. Maybe you play casual and you're like, you know what? I think I got a handle to this. I want to bump it up to the default difficulty mid-game without having to start over. I don't see the problem with doing that, outside of maybe, you know, like, would it be easy to cheese, like, getting achievements? But that's an easy fix. Like, you see a lot of games that block off achievements if you change the difficulty, so you could just do that. But I've yet to be presented with a genuinely compelling argument not to do it, outside of people's own personal reasons, but not an objectively good reason not to do it. So I say, throw my hat in the side of, yeah, accessibility options, put them in there. Why not? It's not going to ruin my game. I'm probably not going to use them because I'm enjoying the game at its regular difficulty, but I think it'd be cool if I had like friends that like these kind of games presentation where like, oh cool, a Japanese action game, man, I wish I didn't get my ass kicked every 2 seconds. Why not? If you disagree, I welcome any argument. If you want to talk about it on Twitter at MarcusStewart7, the number 7, hit me up. Tell me why you think Sekiro shouldn't have an easy mode, and why you think that such a thing could never grace a FromSoftware game, and why. But to wrap up this week's Sekiro talk, really great game so far, really fun combat. The way things work together is the systems work together. It's hard as hell, but it's rewarding as hell. I love that it rewards purely skill over anything else. I think it's a real treat if you have the time, than the patience to put up with everything that is thrown at you. And with that said, I got some more asses to kick. Oh, damn it. Oh, what? Okay. Okay, Sekiro. Here's what else I'm playing. Kingdom Hearts 3. And guess what? I finally finished Frozen! Woo! Let it go! Let it go! No more Frozen! The cold didn't bother me anyway. Yes, finally, after months and months, I have put a cap on Elsa and Anna's love story. Sisterly love, of course, if you've seen the movie. Come on, guys. And yeah, that world kind of highlights, more so than any other world, the thing I'm noticing about the Disney stuff with this game is that I feel like and maybe I'm misremembering, but I feel like in previous Kingdom Hearts games, Sora and the crew kind of directly affected the Disney story more so than they do in this game. Where, like, so in Frozen, the movie plot pretty much plays out as it does. I mean, granted, it's a super abridged version, and it also isn't very good because for some reason, the villain of the movie, the guy that you thought was a good guy, but he's not a good guy, the prince guy, he doesn't talk at all, and he's not even formally introduced. And I don't even think you see his face, actually. He's just kind of like there, like it kind of skips to when he turns bad. So if you didn't see the film, and thank God I watched the film before I played this game, you would never know that he was a good guy at first. You would just think he's some random bad guy. So that world is very much counting on having you watch the film prior to it. But like the movie plot just kind of goes, and Sora and Donald and Goofy are just in the background. Like they don't really affect anything. And I think the Let It Go rendition in that game is a great example of that, where like, you know, Elsa sings Let It Go. It's more or less the same like sequence as the movie. The only difference is that occasionally they'll show a shot of Donald and Goofy and Sora just there, just to remind you that this is still Kingdom Hearts. But otherwise, she's just doing Let It Go. And yeah, like I noticed that with Tangled, and Toy Story not so much, because Toy Story was an original story, because Pixar wanted to do an original story, not just retell one of the plots of the movies. So they were way more hands-on with that plot. But yeah, so far I'm noticing with the original Disney stuff, it's like the movie plot just kind of happens alongside the Kingdom Hearts plot, where like, you know, it's not like Sora was the one that convinced Elsa to, you know, let humanity in or whatever, you know, to accept her ice powers or whatever, you know, Frozen is about. I should know because I watched Frozen, but you get what I'm saying. Like, you know, like he should have been the one that maybe set things right. Or, you know, maybe he's the one that talks to Sven, or Sven's the blonde dude, right? Not the reindeer. I get them mixed up. But the blonde dude with the reindeer. If it's not Sven, I don't remember his name. Like, what if Sora was the one that was like, hey, you know, you and Anna should get together. You guys clearly like each other. They kind of tease at it, but it's not really direct. Yeah, like I just a little bit taken aback by how just they're just kind of along for the ride and doing their own thing more than, because I feel like in the previous Kingdom Hearts games, like with Lion King or Mulan and the other ones, that they were like playing an active role in that story and influencing how the story went. So like they were the reason that like Simba beat Scar or something like that. It was more like it's almost like Assassin's Creed when you think about it. Like, you know, Assassin's Creed, those games are like, oh, this historical event happened, but actually the assassins are the reason things played out the way they did. Like Connor from Assassin's Creed 3 was a big part in the Revolutionary War and a really big reason why the Americans won. And he was present for all the historical events and stuff like that. Like something like that, which kind of now that I'm saying about it, Kingdom Hearts and Assassin's Creed are very similar in that respect. Similar themes of the original character invading this already existing story, historical or fiction. Interesting. Has anyone ever drawn that parallel? But I think that's one of the reasons why it took me a little long to kind of get into the Frozen world, was because it was just kind of the movie with minimal involvement from the original characters. So like, I'm glad to be done with it, and I've just started Monsters Inc. I did all the Winnie the Pooh stuff, which that mini game in Winnie the Pooh, where you're farming, the kind of like match 5 game, I guess, was actually kind of fun. I did all of that in one sitting. Like, I did the entire world in one sitting, all the challenges. I enjoyed that way more than I expected to. It's a good mini game. And it's always fun to hang around Winnie the Pooh. Winnie the Pooh will always have a soft spot in my heart. I still have to watch Christopher Robin, though. So I've started Monsters Inc., which was the last thing I started. I don't know if it's because this is also Pixar. I'm not sure if they did an original story for that too. It kind of kicks off in the first third of the movie, where like Boo is already with Sully and Mike, and they're trying to figure out what to do with her. That's where you meet them. So it kind of looks like they're just gonna, it's just gonna be Monsters Inc. 1 plot, but who knows? But I'm happy to have made progress in that game finally after all of these months. I just hope that Sora and the gang have more of an active role in the world going forward in terms of their steering how their narratives play out. People that have beaten the game, you guys already know the answer to that, so I guess you can let me know. Don't spoil it, but you can tell me otherwise if it's like, nope, it's going to be more of that Frozen style, or if it's like, no, things get better with that stuff. So, yeah, let me know. But other than Kingdom Hearts 3, I have also finally made significant progress in Metro Exodus. So it's been a while since I've talked about this game. I think I mentioned it the week that it came out that I was playing it, and then never again. And I had been playing it, but not much. So you guys really hadn't missed much with that. But I wanted to get back to it. It was just a weird release time. So I was getting ready for like PAX, and like Devil May Cry came out, and Devil May Cry took precedence over everything. So, like, I put everything down to play that. So now that I have gotten that out of the way, I was like, I really want to get through Metro, because I liked what I played, and it was hard to, like, that's a game like, and that's a hard game to put down and walk away from a while, because it's a survival-y game. It doesn't play like traditional shooters. Like, it's something you really have to play for a prolonged time to get used to what it's demanding of you in terms of its combat. Like, it's a much more deliberate and hardcore shooter, in that you can only take a couple shots before you go down, and like remembering how the crafting system works, and just remembering in general what the hell I had in my inventory, and then just keeping track of where to go and stuff like that. So I wanted to sit down and just kind of like brute force my way through the games. I was still in that first opening hub world with the cult that's there. And so I sat down one night, I marathoned through all of it, and then towards the end of it, I was like, okay, I got my groove with this game. Much like Sekiro, I hit my stride with it and was doing really well and wasn't dying nearly as much. And then once you get out of that world, things start to pick up. Like, I was interested in the plot. Like, I thought it had a cool premise of like, discovering that there's people alive outside of the metro, and then going to go look for them. I was like, oh, that's a cool hook, at least for me. And then, I was in that first area for so long, and I was like, oh man, I kind of just want to get out of here now and see what else. So now that I'm out of there, things have progressed. I have gotten past the, without spoiling, I got past the next area that's immediately after that. I did that entire segment. If you finish the game, you probably should know what I'm talking about. And now I'm in their area after that, the more deserty area. I just got there. I'm excited because it's a very different location, like in terms of the environment and the terrain. It looks really pretty. The game's really pretty. And I've opened up the train more. Like, I've got a new, I've expanded the train, we'll say, without spoiling. So yeah, like, and I'm getting to know the characters more. Like, I just found out that I had a character thing in the menu, like a little bio to read everyone's stuff. So I was like, oh, I remember Anna and like the Colonel, but some of these guys, I think I complained the first time a few weeks ago that I was like, man, it would be cool if I got to know these characters and kind of have a bond with them the way I did with the party in Red Dead Redemption 2. which is one of the best parties in any video game I've ever played in terms of characterization and making you care about everybody. And I was like, man, I would really like that for Metro. So I finally found the menu in the diary where you can actually read their things, and now doing that has made it easier to identify them, because before I kept getting them mixed up outside of a couple where I was like, oh, you guys kind of all bleed together. Now I'm like, okay, that guy's Idiot, this guy's this guy. By the way, there is a character named Idiot. I didn't just say that. That's his actual name. And I was like, okay, I know what your personalities are. So that's helped immerse me in this world more. And like, I'm finally like in it, I guess. Like, I like, like the first area I was like, okay, like I'm liking what I'm seeing, like what's being set up, but I had nothing's clicked all the way yet. Now things have clicked, and I'm like, all right, here we go. Like now we're cooking with fire. So I'm happy. It's much like Kingdom Hearts. I'm finally making some significant progress in that game, and I'm really, really happy with that. I've also been playing more Baba Is You. I haven't played in a while though, but I kind of hit like a wall, and like Sekiro's kind of taken over my life, but I want to get back to that because I've been enjoying that. I don't think I've mentioned this, but I beat Ape Out. Did I say that in a previous episode? I beat it a while ago. If I haven't, I beat it. There it is. I know I mentioned I played it. I talked about it a couple episodes. I finished this like a few weeks ago or a couple weeks ago. That game's really good. That game's real fun. That last world gets pretty crazy. And it took me a lot of repeated attempts, but that game is a fun Hotline Miami-ish game, and it's got a really, really great soundtrack and does some cool things with that sound design. So highly recommend checking that out, especially if you're a Hotline Miami fan. Let's see, what else have I been playing? I've been playing a little bit more Tetris Effect now and again. I've been playing a lot of Apex Legends. I know I've been talking about that. I've been playing it more on Xbox now because I found a new crew of friends, of coworkers that have been playing with them. So now I've been spending equal time between PlayStation and Xbox. It's funny because I would probably rather play on Xbox just because, on one hand, the One X is more powerful than my PS4 Pro, and also just the Xbox controller has always been my preferred for shooters. So, but I like playing on both, and I still haven't bought the Battle Pass for either system. I should probably do that, even if it's not like spectacular from what I'm hearing, at least compared to what Fortnite does. But it's like, man, I played this game enough. I should probably at least be working towards some of these rewards and get like Octane and stuff like that. I just haven't gotten around to it. But yeah, Apex is still a lot of fun. Had a great game where we had a great moment where me and my friends, we were playing, and we had this hilarious thing where we were both trapped, or all three of us were trapped in this small little building, and two of us got down. Like me and one of my teammates got downed, and it was only one other person that was doing this to us. He was really good. And so we were down in this building. Our last surviving member is in the building with us, trying to keep this person from coming into the room and finishing us off. And we had the bright idea, me and the person that was down, because there was 3 doors in this building. It's like a small little cube building. And we kept closing the doors, like crawling over to the doors, like we each took a door. And every time the guy would try to come in, we kept closing it immediately, so he couldn't get in. And so since we kept doing this, he kept trying to come in, though he would try to run to the other side to get the door, and then the other teammate that was down would keep closing it, so that his only point of entry was the 3rd door, which is where our still survived teammate could shoot him. And this was a really dumb idea, and we were cracking up as we were doing this, and like the image of it was stupid because you have 2 crawling characters just closing this door constantly that kept opening, and the guy struggling to get in. And then we more or less funneled him into the last remaining door, and he eventually he just kind of gave up and tried to come in and got gunned down by our 3rd teammate. So that really stupid strategy that we just kind of slapped together actually worked, and we had a really good laugh. Moments like that are why I love Apex so much, and that game is still a blast. So yeah, I'm still playing a lot of matches of that. And right now, I've got my eye on Yoshi's Crafted World. I haven't picked it up yet, but it came out the Friday of PAX. And I love Yoshi games. I love Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island. And I'm also a huge fan of Yoshi's Woolly World. I thought that game was fantastic, and I still say the best Yoshi game since Yoshi's Island. So I'm hoping that Crafted World keeps up. It hits the same bar of quality that Woolly World has. I've heard good things about it so far, and I'm kind of in the mood for a platformer, especially a Nintendo platformer. So I'm probably not going to pick it up yet. I'm probably going to wait until I finish one of those 3 games, Metro, Sekiro, or Kingdom Hearts, whichever one comes first. And then I'll pick up Yoshi, but like I've had the demo on my Switch, and I keep looking at it. I was like, man, I really want to buy this full game and get some of that Yoshi on. I want to get my Yoshi on, yo. I want to hop on a dinosaur. I want to punch him in the back of the head so his tongue sticks out. I want to eat some fruit and fart out shells and just all kinds of stuff. You know how it is. We've all been there. But yeah, in case it wasn't obvious, I've been playing a lot of stuff. I've been real busy when it comes to playing games, which is a beautiful place to be in. Alright guys, and that wraps up this episode of Marcus Talks About Games. Apologies for the delay in this episode. I was really busy this weekend, and I also wasn't feeling totally well, so I kind of had to postpone it a bit until I was feeling a little bit up and up. Even the first half of this show, when I was talking about Sekiro, I was still kind of recovering, so you might have heard it in my voice a little bit. I was a little tired, a little drained, I guess we'll say. But I appreciate you for your patience, and I hope you enjoyed the show regardless. If you want to hit me up on Twitter, you can do so at MarcusStewart7. That's the number 7. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe this show. Find it on YouTube at Marcus Makes Media. It's the name of the YouTube channel. You can find this, as well as all their episodes of this show. You can also find it on SoundCloud at Marcus Makes Media, as well as iTunes and Podbean at Marcus Writes About Games. Check me out on Screen Rant, writing game news and reviews over there. And as always, check me out on our Dungeons & Dragons podcast, We Wanted Adventurers and Dragon Guard, both of which you can find at the Best Games Period on SoundCloud and iTunes, as well as at extralife.org. So until next time, folks, I'm going to get back to Sekiro and continue cutting my way through this game, see how far I can get. Maybe I'll have beaten the game by next week. That's probably not going to happen, but who knows? I guess you have to tune in to find out. See you next time.